I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Top Gun Maverick is over. Talk to me, Goose.
What do we have here? Yeah, here I thought we were special.
Fellas, this here's Bagman.
Hangman.
Whatever.
What the hell kind of mission is this?
Everyone here is the best there is. Who the hell are they going to get to teach us?
Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell. Let me be perfectly blunt. You are not my first choice. You are here at the request of Admiral Kosinski, a.k.a. Iceman. He seems to think that you have something left to offer the Navy. What that is, I can't imagine.
With all due respect, sir, I'm not a teacher. Just want to manage expectations.
What the hell? Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking.
And we're off.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Luckily, no one ever sobbed quite that much as they were saying it.
I'm actually surprised the movie wasn't called Top Gun, Talk to Me, Goose.
Oh, man.
Top Gun Maverick. Oh, my goodness. We've made it to Top Gun Maverick. I didn't think we would ever get here. This is definitely the popcorniest of the popcorn movies in our entire season.
This is the fourth in our series where we're looking at the 2023 nominees for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Theatrical Feature Films at the DGA Awards. And, coming after a string of really solid movies, and now we get to this one, which, I mean, you talked about popcorniest, certainly of this series, it's the popcorniest of the run of movies that we're looking at here. And it's interesting that this ended up in this lineup of these movies, Banshees of Inisherin, Fabelmans, Tar, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then there's this.
Yeah. It's a weird swing, but it's not a movie I do not. It's not a movie I do not enjoy. How's that? Parse that, internet. I had a great time with this movie, and this was actually a movie that we did on the film board. So Ocean and Chrissy and I had the benefit of having talked about the movie right after we first saw it, and so I went back and listened to that episode to see how opinions have changed. Some of them have, some of them haven't, but I'm excited to sort of relitigate the movie with you.
Well, having not had the privilege of talking about it yet at all, I'm definitely looking forward to chatting about it and the journey that it took to get this film made, which, it was a long time coming, really. I mean, it's one of these legacy sequels,
Yeah, for sure. So what's your read on the movie? How did it hit you watching it this time?
This is my third time watching it, and it is a purely enjoyable film that feels so Hollywood. Like everything about it just feels so Hollywood structure, Hollywood, the way that they build on the characters and develop the characters and give them their missions and their goals and the character arcs that we watch them go through. Like everything feels so planned out and like perfectly scripted the way that Hollywood would want it to be, but not in a negative way. Like all of that is like the best that Hollywood can do when Hollywood is making a Hollywood movie, like that's how it feels to me. It's so Hollywood, but it's so stinking entertaining. Like I just have a blast watching the film. I thoroughly enjoy the characters, the character arcs, the relationships. The action sequences are just, stunning things to look at. It's a really fun film.
Well, this is where I would like to start. Are you ready? This was actually your idea, and you don't even know it. One of the things that you wrote in the for our options for our member pre-show chat for this episode was "older is better." Movies, come up with a list of movies where newer, was it newer is better or older is better? Now I can't
Older
remember.
is better.
I am curious your take on that, because this movie, there are some story pivots, obviously, but the general arc of this movie is very similar to the first movie. The opening nostalgia porn is essentially, the same stuff as Top Gun. We open with the same read that talks about, the origins of Top Gun, with the only addition being now women are present, men and women as the best pilots in the world, right?
And fixing a spelling error.
And they fix a spelling.
The first
they
one.
fix a spelling error, right? That's awesome that happens in Hollywood.
Yep.
And then it leads to the same thing with the same music and the same everything. This movie is set up, I think, as much as a sequel as it is a do-over. And I'm curious how that part specifically hits you.
Well, and it's interesting because, we'll talk about kind of the history of the script and getting it, figuring out what it was going to be once they decided they were going to move forward with it. But I haven't rewatched the original since I did my Tom Cruise marathon and went through all of his films. I don't like that film as much as some people do. I never had the connection of having watched it in my youth, which we talked about in our member pre-show chat. This wasn't a film that I watched. Mine was Iron Eagle. That's the one. It's the low rent Top Gun that was my pick. So I never had that draw to Top Gun. And when I watched it, I was like, yeah, it's okay. It feels very Hollywood. I can see why it has a draw that it does. It's action. It's the Simpson Bruckheimer nature of it all with Tony Scott at the helm. Like all of it felt, it felt like it was pushing all those buttons without necessarily a lot of meat on the bones. It's interesting. I do enjoy it. I enjoy the relationships in that film. And I think what makes this film work for me, because it feels very much the same. We have to have the training, but now it's like, it's for a specific mission, but they still found a way to script in training for these they're already all Top Gun pilots, but now they have to train for this very particular mission. And then you still have the big journey into enemy territory for this mission at the end of the film. And so the structure does feel very much the same, but I think they found smart ways to maneuver past that by giving us different character relationships to really build on in strong ways. And that's, I think, the thing that makes this work so well. Like the relationship that we learn about over the course of the film between Maverick and Rooster, as to the fact that, Rooster is Goose's son, and Maverick had reasons to pull his papers for when he applied to get into the academy, and setting him back for a number of years. And so we kind of get that whole story and why Rooster resents him. So there's that relationship that grows and matures over the course of the film, and to the point where by the time we're at the end, it's very much a father-son relationship. And also just this relationship of this character who's grown up in the Navy as a pilot and has refused to ever move beyond captain because he doesn't want to be at a desk. He wants to be in the air, in the seat of a jet. And how that age and that decision really has changed or how the whole system has changed around him. And now it's like this, in the terms of like in that, older is better. Can he still do it? Is he as good as he once was back in 1986 when he was in Top Gun? Can he still do the things that he did then? And I think that's like, there are really interesting and strong character elements in this film that I think, while they're repeating a lot of the elements from the first Top Gun, it makes it work a lot better.
Well, I think that's true. And it makes me wonder, I don't have the benefit of being able to do this, and I don't know anybody right now who hasn't seen the first Top Gun, but I wonder, in the spirit of Top Gun Maverick as a do-over, if this movie could stand alone well enough. I think there's not quite enough exposition to describe his relationship with Goose. I think you kind of have to come in with a little bit of that baggage from the first movie to understand. I think I don't know that the flashback holds enough weight to understand kind of what the level of his grief over the last 35 years. But I wonder, because I think Tom Cruise is so much more interesting a character in this movie than he was in the first movie. The first movie, he was just all ego, cocky, strutting toxicity. And this movie, he comes to it with some heart and with some weight. And I think, older Tom Cruise is able to play that uniquely because he's also capable of such extreme physicality. I think that part is fascinating. I like this movie a lot better than the original Top Gun. I think it exceeds it in every appreciable way. And I sort of wish they had focused on that part of the storyline to the extent that you could watch it and not have to have seen the first one. Because I think the first one today is really aged, right? There's some great flying, but the rest of it, the whole culture of the film is just aged poorly.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the 80s. I think a lot of that is just the structure or kind of the times and how they were making these sorts of high-octane action movies at the time.
Right.
There's a lot to it. But are you saying you don't think that you can watch this without having seen the first one?
I think you can, but I feel like coming to it knowing, having a little bit more of a significant sense or a significant memory of how Goose died and at what what drove Goose to die, like the fact that it was that Tom Cruise's portrayal of Maverick, that level of ego that led to the death of his rear officer. I think that matters. And this movie, I think, is a little bit lightweight on that. And I wonder if you could watch it having none of that history and still get a sense of the importance of that relationship with Bradley.
I think that you get the importance of the relationship with Bradley. I think they do enough there. I mean, you're right. If you watch the first Top Gun, I think it's going to give you all of the backstory to really help flesh out the relationships of the characters and everything like that. So you have more weight when it comes to that. But I still think they do an effective job of crafting a story where it's not enough time has passed, where I think they smartly crafted a script in a way where you could walk into this without having to have seen the first one. Like my kids watch this with me. They've never seen the first one, and they both loved it. They think this one's, they think it's fantastic. They might not have all of the specific understanding of everything that went on between Maverick and Goose, and even how Iceman ties into the story and everything like that. But I think that they still understood that there was tension in their histories.
So here's an example, and again, because it's been a little while, Penny was not in the first movie.
No, she's mentioned in the first movie. Okay, yeah, that was my memory of it, that she is mentioned in the first movie, but we don't have a lot of story, and they, I think, do a fine job through some kind of lightweight bar exposition to set up the, Admiral's daughter relationship, and there's enough cultural stereotype around that we're able to get what that relationship was like and Maverick's role in it. And the fact that them coming back together actually, to me, feels like a reunion, even though it's a reunion for something I was not a part of, the original get together. And I think that is very successful. Yeah.
So that stuff works.
Yeah, no, I think, because I mean, it was just off the cuff sort of comments about how, you slept with the Admiral's daughter sorts of conversations, Penny, and, they mentioned that. And so I don't think that we need all of that. I know there was some question about are they going to bring back anybody from the first movie, like, well, specifically love interest wise, Kelly McGillis. I don't think that she had been asked. I think that in Hollywood standards, she doesn't have the Hollywood look anymore. And I think that was something that they were going for by casting Jennifer Connelly and kind of going back to an older story with that. I mean, Meg Ryan at least gets featured in flashbacks.
Yeah, that's right. I think to Jennifer Connelly's credit, she crushes it. And the fact that she can be such a Hollywood star and a believable owner of this bar and really rocking the beachside boyfriend Gene look is a real testament to her versatility. She takes a part that's written pretty lightweight and actually makes something of it. Like I think she's fantastic.
Yeah, no, she's fantastic. She's always just such a delight to watch. Obviously, I don't know if it's the reason she ended up in the film, but she had worked with Joseph Kosinski, the director, previously on his previous film, Only the Brave, also with Miles Teller. So I'm guessing that's kind of some of the thinking that he had in casting her and perhaps Miles in the film. And obviously he'd worked with Tom Cruise in Oblivion. So a lot of connections to this. But I mean, I think bringing her in, I wonder about her having that car as somebody who just runs a bar at the beach. But I don't know, maybe there's family money from her father's time in the military as an admiral.
So much family
She's
money.
got that fantastic sailboat. She's got the great car.
But also, like, she has the rules. And maybe one of the rules is just like, if she rings the bell, give me all your money. Like, those rules are awesome. And like, you'd be forgiven if you were a little frustrated that you didn't know the rules about not putting your phone on the bar. That's tough.
I would just walk out. Like if she rang the bell at me, I'm saying, well, sorry, I'm out.
Sorry. Yeah. There's a whole sort of naval aviator bar culture, I think, that honorably, if the bell rings, you have to honor it, or else the bell rings again and you have to be thrown out. That's that's it. You only buy the round or get thrown out. So I don't think you're allowed to walk out anymore. That's fine. That's fine.
Anyway, well, I don't know what tangent we were on. We're talking about the connections between the first movie and this movie.
Yes. Well, and maybe we should go back to the beginning, because I think that after the nostalgia porn, the jet takeoff porn, we actually get the sequence that was deeply featured in the trailer, and in my mind, it's where the movie starts. Which is the sequence where we meet Maverick in his hangar, his old broken down hangar, working on his plane. And then he gets on his old bike and he goes, and we learn that he's now a test pilot, and they're trying to hit the mythical Mach 9, no, Mach 10, no, Mach 10.2 in order to shame the classic Ed Harris, Lieutenant Admiral Colonel 7 stars Ed Harris. And I do love this sequence. I love it because I actually think, 35 years on, this is where this is a believable point in Maverick's life, right? I believe that he ends up there. And I think that, to the credit of jumping time, that gets me into the movie in a really convincing way. Do you buy the test pilot angle?
Oh, well, I absolutely do. I think that's a thrilling way to begin the film, giving Maverick, as somebody who can't get past the idea of just being a pilot and flying and refusing to move past being a captain so that he can stay in a situation where he's always flying. Now he's in this place where he's doing these test pilot maneuvers and things. And I think that's really, it makes for an exciting element of the film. Likewise, by giving us this story of this Dark Star, it gives us something that feels like a believable next step in the place of aviation. Like, we're moving into this type of, this is a manned plane, but we're moving into something where we're getting into situations with flying faster and faster and faster, and starting to include more drones and everything. And by giving us this thing that I guess was based on an actual concept for a jet, it makes us feel like, okay, I can see this as the next thing in Maverick's career. Like, he has moved to this place where he's just operating as a test pilot because he's exceptional as a pilot, but not somebody they want to send out into action.
Yeah, I think that nails it. And it also is the setup to, first, a great suspenseful kind of action scene, right? As he pushes the limits of the aircraft and then blows it up because of ego. And then we get the bit in the in the diner, which is a funny bit. Like, he walks in, he crashes, he parachutes down. Presumably, we don't see any of it. He ends up in this logging town, who knows where, and gets a glass of water and then says, "Where am I?" And the kid says, "Earth." Like, that's a good punchline to an intense sequence.
Perfect punchline. It is So funny.
What's funny is it's a Spielberg punchline, is what it is. Like that whole opening sequence reminds me so much of Steven Spielberg filmmaking that it's heartwarming.
Yeah, it just makes me laugh so hard with that little kid. I was trying to figure out how far would he have gone, because he wasn't going Mach 10 for very long, but he obviously went far, because that's a fast flight. And, when we get that, shot from Earth's atmosphere, you can see that he's curved, which I don't know if you should smartly curve while you're flying at Mach 8, 9, 10, whatever. I feel like that's probably more
Maybe
dangerous.
That's why the thing blew up. You're right.
Maybe, yeah. But it's implied that he traveled around 386 miles over the course of the flight. He took off from somewhere in the Mojave Desert.
386 miles doesn't seem far enough.
Well, he wasn't in it for that long. And so 386 miles in like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it was. We do see him turn at Mach 9, and he almost makes a 90-degree turn. That is an acceleration of 942 meters per second squared.
Okay, I don't care for it.
That just sounds absolutely crazy. He took off in the Mojave Desert and started a gentle loop at around 66% of the flight's duration. So I'm going to assume a final radius from takeoff about 100 miles. That puts him in southern Nevada or southeast Utah. There's a diner called the Wagon Wheel Diner in St. George, Utah. So perhaps that's what they were thinking of. But anyway,
there's a company. Senior Director of Engineering at Stratolaunch, Aaron Casimir, is building a real-life hypersonic aircraft called the Talon A, which will travel at Mach 6, 6 times the speed of sound, or more than 3,000 miles per hour.
Yeah.
3,000 at Mach 6. So what Mach 10 has got to be,
more.
5,500 miles per hour?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right, but again, he was only in it for a small number of minutes.
Yeah, I know. It's just by the look, and let me just say, the effect, the sky effects of the sequence are out of this world. They're really fantastic. Like, I love watching him fly from the really, really wide perspective. It just, my sense of watching those sequences feel like he should have taken off from the Mojave Desert and landed in Shanghai. He was flying so fast.
Yeah, right. I guess you can see a few times on the Dark Star, there's a skunk logo on it. That logo is actually the Skunk Works logo. That's part of the Lockheed Martin program for this Mach 6 unmanned plane that they had been designing. So I guess that's just an homage to that.
7,826 miles per hour. Mach 10.2.
It's crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's, of course, we should have figured that out because the speed of sound is 760 miles an hour at sea level.
Oh, see, there you go.
Oh, see, what would happen to Lieutenant Corporal 7-Star Admiral Ed Harris standing under the thing as it takes off? The roof of that little security thing lifts off of it, and he stays rooted to the ground.
It just shows how tough he is.
So tough. He has been tough. As long as he's been in the military, that man's been tough.
Ed Harris is a tough man. No, it's good stuff.
All right.
But I think that the point of this whole opening is to show us that Maverick still bends the rules when he can, when he sees that it could work to, prove something. He's not here yet, so let's do this test and let's push it all the way and we'll hit Mach 10 so that we can save the program. And as he says, what's going to happen here? He's like, but at least all of your jobs will still be saved. And so we're introducing Maverick as somebody who will break the rules. Doesn't matter what happens to him as long as he can help everybody else out. And I think that is an important part of, kind of the character development and where we start with Maverick at the start of this film, because as we see him progress in the training, one of his big things is bring everybody back, right? That is a core component of what makes Maverick who he is now. Like, I can't go through the pain of losing anybody anymore.
But we narratively, this setup works so perfectly with the build up to the final action sequence, the final attack on the bunker, because it's the exact same logic. right? Hasn't been stopped yet, so he's going to go steal a plane and do exactly and prove that he can do what he said he was going to do. It's the identical. This is an Oreo cookie of Maverick logic, and between there is a training montage, and after that is the juicy action gulp of milk. That's what this movie is: perfect Oreo cookie and milk.
Yeah, and that's why it works effectively. We understand who Maverick is, and we understand he's a person who is going to push people to do their best, is going to hold them back if he doesn't think that they're able to do their best, and is going to always try to prove that these things can be done, and so that they have confidence in themselves. And that's really what that whole last part of the training is showing them this can be done. And hence, by doing so, which it had to happen in the movie, but he's not left as the trainer. He is actually now given the role as team leader. And it was kind of expected, but it works perfectly the way that we get that set up.
There's an interesting thing that, and it's something that I think it's a, we'll say it's a complaint of the movie compared to the first film that I think still holds true after seeing it this time. The original film, they're all working toward graduation, and then the big emergency happens, right?
Yeah.
So graduation identifies the best of the best. Graduation says everybody who left this program, made it through the program, they're the best of the best, and we're convinced they can do whatever they're asked to do because they're graduates of Top Gun. They can do whatever they want to do. This movie, they don't graduate, right? They don't graduate the end of the program before they're being tasked with doing the hard thing. And at no point do we actually get to see them capable of doing the hard thing until Maverick, their aging instructor, does the hard thing. So this movie, the only way we know, or we are led to believe that they can do a hard thing, is through the power of belief. Through the power of, if he can do it, surely we can do it. Now let's go do it for real. And that, I think, is a point of weakness in the movie. It's a little bit like hand wavy to me.
Well, it is, but I think, and because essentially they have to finish their training in the field, right? Like that's exactly what happens.
Right.
Rooster is still slow. Like he hasn't learned his lessons yet. And so by the time he's in the field, it's like now he has to finally, he knows he can do it. Maverick obviously knows he can do it because otherwise he wouldn't have picked him as his wingman. But he still is flying slow and holding things up and has to get past his final mental hurdles in order to actually make things happen. Now, in the case of Phoenix and Bob, they already kind of proved that they could maneuver through the canyons, so they're good at that. Is the only time we see them attempt to drop the bomb is when Bob's camera is, or his
camera's borked.
His camera's borked, yeah. And so he can't do it. And so this time it's not, and he's able to set the target and do all the stuff that he's supposed to do. And so things are working better for them on that time.
Yeah.
And so I think that they set it up where we can buy that they can get to the places that they need to get. It's just they have to mentally, like you said, and it's in some sense, it's kind of what we talked about on the Marvel Movie Minute. It's like once you've seen Iron Man learn to fly, anyone can hop into an Iron Man suit and fly totally fine because we've already gone through the learning process. And I think that's kind of the Hollywood shortcut that we're getting here is like, well, we've seen it's doable because Maverick can do it. So now, everybody can do it.
Well, okay. I guess I would push back on that because I think that's the whole point of making Maverick the team lead is that not everybody can do it. Maverick is the prime among peers as the only guy who demonstrates he can do it, and everybody else struggles, and they just get lucky. When Maverick does it, of course he does it. When Rooster does it, it's a wish and a prayer, which is the feeling I guess we want, right? I mean, that's the feeling we're going for because these are the new kids, and they have to earn their stars, right? Earn their wings. But it just is an interesting change between the first movie because it feels so loose compared to what they were required to do in the first movie. The first movie, they graduated and then they became official. And in this movie, they never actually demonstrated that they were capable of finishing the thing beyond their instructor being able to do it. And still they were put up to do their best.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, the way that it's been pitched, they're all Top Gun graduates. They all can clearly do it. But there's a sense that has kind of been built that they don't mentally believe it can be done.
Yeah.
That's, I think, the thing. And, by seeing Maverick actually accomplish it as an old man, but somebody who is also, he's a Top Gun, but he's old, they go, oh, well, it can be done. And so I think it's just Hollywood. Yeah, I mean, I think there is some gloss to the way that they accomplish it, but I guess I don't have those same issues. Because I don't think it would have really helped me at all. I think it would have been boring if we see them after Maverick does it, and then we see them each go through the program. Oh, they can all do it now. Okay. So now once we're in the mission, it's boring. And I just think in Hollywood script parlance, I think that they found a way to tell the story to make it effective and not boring.
I don't think it would be boring, because boring is like unencumbered, right? Like, boring is the exact same thing, but what they're met with in their real trench run is real ammunition and real other planes and all these things that make the dogfighting exciting. And so just knowing that they can mechanically do the job without any interference, now they have to face interference. And that's what makes it exciting for me. And that's what made this exciting.
But they don't. There's no interference in the entire run of the mission until after it's over. And that's
exactly right. And that's the case I'm making. Like, they could make it not boring by just introducing interference in other places, but they didn't. Like, they made it a wish fulfillment, and that's a thing that strikes me as awkward, and I don't think that holds up quite as well.
I can see that. Yeah. I guess it doesn't bother me, but I can see your point. I can see what you're saying about it.
Well, and the other case is this movie builds a lot on the back of Maverick needing to let it go, to the point where we visit Val Kilmer, Admiral Val, and he types "let it go," and the camera cuts to Maverick's face, and the camera cuts back to Typey McTypey screen saying, "You got to let it go," many times. That seems to be a message that Maverick needs to let it go, and Maverick never once lets it go. He never lets anything go.
He does.
When does he let it go? He
lets go of his fear of including Rooster by including Rooster as his wingman. Like, that's how he lets it go. He finally is able to...
That's the let it go.
Yeah, he does.
I guess what I was looking for is, at what point does he let it go to the point where he trusts these guys, the Top Guns, to actually do their job and not have to be in the seat? That would have been a bold thing for a Hollywood movie with Tom Cruise. I'm not saying it ever would have been done, because people are showing up to see 60-year-old Tom Cruise in the cockpit. Like, I get that. But wouldn't it have been the most bold decision to actually let Glenn Powell, handsome Glenn, do his thing, right? Like,
so is that the movie you would want to watch, though? Like,
maybe.
Interesting. Okay. Like, I can see them doing that. I can't see them doing that with Tom Cruise or Top Gun. Much like I couldn't see them doing that with Tom Cruise and Jeremy Renner in the mission for Ghost Protocol potential handoff that was intended to happen. Like, I just don't think that would have ever been in the cards for the direction that they were going to take. And I mean, this is a Hollywood movie. It's a Tom Cruise movie. And I appreciate that you think that that's an interesting direction. I just... I can't imagine that would be something like, it's just not ever crossed my mind, because, like, why would Tom Cruise sign on to make a new Top Gun movie if he was just training the troops and we were watching all these young kids do it?
Right. He needs it. It's a substantially different movie. And I think he's too, weirdly, I'm saying this out loud, he's too young and virile to be taking a backseat role, right? Like, he demonstrates too much of a commitment to the physicality of his performances to ever be able to do that. But I do think that at some point we're going to start seeing roles in series with Tom Cruise where he has to hand things off or not be in them, or the franchises will just die. And maybe that's what has to happen after, after the next Mission Impossible. Maybe that's what happens. The franchise has to die because Tom Cruise will eventually age out of making these kinds of movies. And how do they live? I'm not saying that this movie, Top Gun, Maverick, was that movie. I mean, for God's sakes, his name is in the title. They would never do that. But it would be interesting to see what a movie like that would be. Who's the star? Would Glenn Powell have been the guy to take over some of Tom Cruise's on-screen panache?
Well, it is interesting. The oldest real Navy pilot retired at the age of like 54, I think. And Maverick, according to what we've seen as far as birth dates and everything, theoretically would be 60 at the time that this mission would be happening, which is a little older than Cruise was when he made the film. But still, I think that's pretty interesting. But, and while I agree there will be points when Cruise has to start stepping back, I mean, Harrison Ford is still Indiana Jones, and that's like 80 years old. He's still playing the role. So it's entirely possible we'll still be seeing Tom Cruise doing these grizzled old men.
Oh, God, I hope not. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
Do you get the Death Star trench run comparison?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Do you think they realized that they wrote the Death Star trench run?
Oh, I'm sure it was exactly. I feel like it just felt so designed that way that I don't know, which I think is part of the reason that they just wanted to have them do it and get it out of the way, because the real part of the action sequence is everything afterward. It's when they have to get away. It's getting shot down, flying in the old F-14. All of that stuff, I think, is the more critical parts that they were, looking at.
Those are the parts that have aged very well for me. I thought when I first saw the movie, I had some complaints about the F-14 bit. I thought maybe we've gone too far. But watching it this time, I had a blast watching that plane, watching him take the plane, get the plane in the air. Miles Teller, I think their relationship changes as they're running across the tarmac and they save each other and they're doing the whole thing in the woods. I think that worked so well for me this time. I was really surprised that I was critical of it the first time I watched the movie.
No, yeah, I have a blast with all of that. And when they're flying in the F-14 and they're against that other enemy fighter that almost seems to stop midair and do that funky turn, and they're like, what in the hell is that? They made it so fun in the way that we were really, which was very part of the kind of the thematic elements of the movie, but the relics versus the younger, newer, better models in the air with the planes, but also with these pilots. And I think that was an element of the script that I really enjoyed, the way that they bring back the old F-14s and show us this kind of transition. I thought that was such a smart element to include here.
This movie people have been critical of this movie because over the last several years, when the marketing came out for the movie, it was, look at all the practical effects that they're doing with this movie. And since then, I think rightfully so, CG artists have come out with this whole thing around invisible CGI, right? And this movie, to the CGI artists' credit, has 2,400 visual effects shots. That is a non-trivial number of shots in a movie that was lauded to be the most practical of movies, right? They're actually in the cockpits. I think I know what you're going to say to this question, but I'm curious your stance on the invisible CGI perspective and this movie's perspective when marketed as being what it was.
Well, and forgive me, I'm not exactly sure on the specifics of the language and the marketing and everything, but I mean, these are really the actors flying these planes. That's I think my impression of my recollection, I should say, of the marketing of everything about this film is that's what it was pushing. It's that we're really flying these planes. They trained these actors how to do it. They had cameras in the cockpits that they were turning on and off themselves. They had to do their own makeup and touch up their wardrobe and all that sort of stuff. All real while they were actually flying the planes. They had to be trained on how to use the ejection seats in case something went wrong. It was very specific in that element of the story. And I understand that, obviously there's going to be a lot of visual effects in the film. I mean, you don't make movies nowadays without visual effects. It's just kind of a standard that people are including, especially in action films. And while we're seeing these pilots actually flying and we're seeing real jets in the air, there are a lot of other vehicles that we're seeing in the air. We're seeing obviously things explode. I mean, there's going to be a lot of other stuff that they need to include to kind of build that story. And so I get it. Like it's the balance. And I think this is what I think probably in the marketing they were intending to be saying, is that like, yeah, we're using some visual effects in the movie, but we're trying to do as much with the real people in the cockpits as we can to make it really feel like we're actually there. You can see these people actually pulling several Gs as they're flying these planes for real.
Yeah.
I don't think they were being disingenuous with how they were pitching the production of the film. I think nowadays, especially as we move into the world of AI, where people are being incredibly wary about images that they're seeing, the National Geographic cover where they shifted, one of the pyramids, like it's real, but they're tweaking it. Like you have to be real careful about what you're actually seeing. And perhaps you also have to start being real careful about what you're saying and how you're pitching these things, because people will take you to task on it, even if that wasn't what you were intending it to be actually saying. And I don't know, that's my read on the situation.
Well, and I think you just said it. Like those were the magic words, is what exactly are you saying when you're saying these actors were really in these planes? Because in many, many shots, they weren't in these planes. They were in a plane, and a cockpit was dressed to look like it, but the military didn't give them enough access to have all the time being in the back seat of that cockpit. And so a lot of the cockpit was recreated, but all of the surrounding sort of canopy and the air flying by was the actors in the air, right? That's amazing that they could do. Who cares what plane they're in? The Su-57, the fifth generation aircraft in the movie, are completely CGI, right? They were planes that were flying.
The enemy ones you're
the enemy,
about.
Right, the enemy ones. The F-14 is completely CGI, right? That plane, it was a different plane, and they put a CGI shell on it because they got one out of a museum to model, but they didn't have one that was flying. So, but they were actually in a plane, and they were flipping all over the place and pulling those, pulling G's to make their faces get all rubbery. And that's the stuff to celebrate. The cleanup stuff, the stuff that puts you more in the story, is the stuff that I think we should be able to let go of that. And I think the challenge is marketing the movies. I think just is learning to be more aware of how you frame these kinds of grandiose sort of comments on totality, because you're right, people will take you to task. I don't care that the F-14, the look of the F-14 on exterior shots was not the real F-14 flying in the air, because I believe that the actors were actually in a plane enough to let go of that. That's fine. And I think that's the important piece. This movie is an incredible celebration of a marriage of practical and CG effects. And that's what we should be partying over.
Well, and in the spirit of The Fall Guy, which is in theaters, and kind of the angle with that film of a stuntman who is the actor that he's portraying is kind of jealous of him. And, there's, I don't want to get into revealing points of the plot, but there is this actor portrays himself as somebody who does his own stunts and stuff. And Tom Cruise, portrays himself as somebody who does his own stunts and stuff. But I do think that it's important to remember that even when Tom Cruise, quote, does his own stunts, there's a whole stunt team around him helping support everything. There are probably times where Tom Cruise isn't necessarily doing a particular stunt. If maybe it doesn't matter, it's not the big one or whatever. I'm not particularly sure. But the point is, I think that there are a lot of elements in production that includes a lot of people doing a lot of parts in stunts and everything. And I think it is valuable to remember that there are people who are doing the stunts. Tom Cruise is obviously a part of that, but there's a whole team of people building all of these things and making these effects happen. And it's a team deciding to do something in a unique way, having these people actually piloting planes, whatever they happen to be, but actually piloting them, hitting G's, turning their cameras on and off. And I think that's the element of the story that I find incredibly fascinating, that they came up with this way to shoot this, so it feels so much more realistic.
Yeah, me too. It's extraordinary. And the behind the scenes stuff, watching the way they mounted all these IMAX cameras to these planes in these cockpits to actually make them work, and capture this footage and the enormous like wide angle canopy footage to feel like I'm in the air with them is extraordinary. And I do. I mean, one of the unsung heroes of flight footage is light. In this movie, there is no movie that captures the natural look of light in a way that is as believable as Top Gun Maverick. I really feel like they just nail the way the sun works against their helmets because they're there. That's really cool.
And that was really interesting hearing Claudio Miranda talk about this, because he said it was like nail biting trying to figure out how to do this. I mean, first of all, they had to spend an entire year or more to actually figure out how to put these they were Sony Venice 6K full frame IMAX cameras into the cockpits in a way where the lens and the body were separated and attached with a cable, because there was just no space. They had to basically build brand new cameras to actually do this. And then Miranda had to constantly be studying the weather of the day, the flight patterns, and cloud potential of where the clouds are going to be, where the sun was going to be based on where they were flying, how low they were, so that he could kind of figure out what the camera settings were going to be each time and then adjust it, going, well, I hope that this f-stop is going to be correct so that I'm not blowing out the image based on where things are going to be as they're flying this. And just cross his fingers and hope, because he couldn't check any of it until the planes got back and he could download all the footage and see if they actually got the footage or not. And that's incredibly difficult. I mean, yeah, it was no lighting that they were using. It was just the sun that they used. So it was really hard to actually put together, and then trusting these actors to kind of get everything correct and all that. Yeah.
It's a huge feat. I mean, the blend of that sort of practical filmmaking with the after the post CG is extraordinary. The movie's extraordinary. So all of that other stuff, like the complaints I have of the narrative, like the parallels and the nostalgia porn and the trench run, all of that stuff, it just sort of washes away as soon as we're in the air, because I am filled with such joy as a like childlike wonder as a moviegoer. Like I am just lost in it. I'm lost in it.
Yeah, they do a great job with that. Did you hear about the lawsuit? I guess the second lawsuit in the Top Gun franchise. Did you hear about all this?
No, tell me about it.
So there was a family of author Ehud Yonai. He's an Israeli author. He wrote an article in California, a magazine, in May 1983, excuse me, that inspired the first film. He sued Paramount for copyright infringement over the release of that one. And I believe there was a settlement at the time. He had since passed away. His family then subsequently sued when they found out about Top Gun Maverick. Let me just read this here. Jerry Bruckheimer produced the original film, whose screenplay was written by Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr. All three men participated in the sequel, even though Jim Cash had passed away. According to the lawsuit, Paramount had obtained exclusive film rights to Yonai's article, but ignored the 35-year copyright law, wherein the rights reverted to Yonai's widow, Shosh, and son Yuval in January 2020, after the writer's death in 2012. The lawsuit claimed that Maverick contained elements similar to the original article, and the Paramount continued with the filming even after receiving notice of the copyright's termination. The distributor considered most of the sequel to have been completed before then and denied that Maverick was derived from the article, and the suit ended up getting dismissed, I guess. And I guess it's because everything was done just before that 2020 cutoff. The film was released after, but yeah, it's just this... And that's all kind of COVID stuff. So I think that maybe that's why they were finally getting it done, within that time frame. But
wow, interesting.
I wonder if that's going to affect any further movement forward with it.
I think we could be done.
Well, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, right. Can we just do a quick run through of some of the other cast members that I think are awesome?
Yeah.
First, the one that I did not know that I needed to see in this movie because the first time I saw this movie, I did not know who he was, is Manny Jacinto, who played Lieutenant Billy Fritz Avalone. You probably don't think much of him because he's not a huge role in this movie, but he was Jason Mendoza in The Good Place.
He's one of the other nominees for the possible position, but always blurred in the background.
Yes, exactly right. I think that is so great that he is actually in this movie. So Manny Jacinto is fantastic. Let's see, who else was very exciting in this movie? We've got a lot of handsome people.
I love Louis Pullman as Bob, Bill Pullman's son, and he's just always funny. I think that role of Bob is just a great one, and just kind of seeing the bit with him in the football game and stuff is a really fun bit, but I enjoy him quite a bit here.
Man, he looks like Bill Pullman too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. I mean, it's the group is great. Miles Teller, Glenn Powell, Louis Pullman. You've got Monica Barbaro.
On Glenn Powell, because Glenn Powell plays the Iceman part. Right, like he's the guy who's playing the cocky. The problem with this character is that there's a lot more story here than there was in the first movie. So much of the first movie, there was a lot delivered to the mano a mano ego off between Val Kilmer and Tom Cruise. And in this movie, there just isn't as much for Glenn Powell to do. To be a jerk, right? So he gets some sequences in training, he gets some montage quips, but it's not a substantial role as Val Kilmer had in the first movie. And I think it's fine for where the movie ended up. It's a little bit sad because I like Glenn Powell a lot, and I think his star is on the rise right now, and it's interesting to see him in this role. In the spirit of no small parts, I think he pulls it off very, very well.
Yeah, he's an interesting actor who I feel like I just have not seen in a lot of stuff. But then you look at his career and you're like, oh, wow, he's been acting a lot longer than I realized. Starting off in Spy Kids 3D Game Over when he was Long-Fingered Boy. And over the course of his career, he would work with Robert Rodriguez a number of times, along with Richard Linklater, even more, like even to the point where Linklater's new movie Hitman's playing in theaters with him right now. And so I think that's an interesting element of kind of his Texas roots, is doing a lot of those sorts of smaller things. Like he did, what was the baseball? Everybody Wants Some. That's the one I'm thinking of. And so I've seen him in a number of things, but I don't think he was somebody who popped in my head as really somebody until this movie. And then suddenly it's like, between this and Anyone But You and Hitman, like and then Twisters coming out this summer, like he seems to be the next big like it guy in Hollywood, you know?
Yeah, I think so, and so it's. I think it's really great. I think he's in the spirit of white guys with punchable faces who are charismatic on screen. I think he's great. I think he is, weirdly, he's in the John Hamm camp of white guys with punchable faces who are extremely charismatic on screen. Yeah. And it's so interesting to see John Hamm as the recalcitrant boob, like the guy in the way of everything, the rule follower, the guy who hates. It's hard for me almost to believe John Hamm in this role because I've seen so much of John Hamm. And so I think he's great. I think he's great in this movie, but it takes me a little bit to get accustomed to his part. I never really saw Hamm as a military guy.
Oh, I guess I didn't have any issue with that. I bought him right away. I mean, it's a solid group. You know, Bashir Salahuddin as Hondo,
so good.
Who's Maverick's friend from the beginning that he brings along. I love seeing him. All of the young people, like it's just a great group. And I really buy the chemistry between Connolly and Cruise. Like that feels authentic. I feel like there's a history there. I sometimes you have a harder time with that, but for the two of these people, they just worked so well together.
Not a problem at all.
Yeah, no, it was great.
What else you got?
Well, just the script for this, like the development of this, it went through a lot of things. Like initially, back when Tom Cruise was talking about Born on the 4th of July, somebody brought up the idea of a sequel, and he said that would be irresponsible. I don't know if that's just because, he didn't know where it would go or just didn't like the idea of sequels yet at this point in his career. But then finally in 2010, Paramount started developing it talking to Bruckheimer and Tony Scott to do the sequel, Tom Cruise reprising his role. They hired a guy to work on the script, and he started working on it. That was Peter Craig started working on it. And then, of course, the tragedy that when Tony Scott ended his life, which was very, very sad to happen. And so that kind of put things on the back burner for a little while as they tried to figure out what they were going to do with it. And in the meantime, they were batting around different script ideas. Bruckheimer wanted to do a story that involved drones and how drones were kind of replacing pilots, and that was going to be the angle. So then Justin Marks is brought in to work on the story, and they start kind of coming up with a plan for it, and they start getting it farther along, and that's when I think everybody starts coming on board. So two very, I guess, different stories that they kind of mashed together, and then they ended up having three different screenwriters working on it. Eric Warren Singer came on to work on it. Christopher McQuarrie, who works with Cruise a lot, came in to do rewrites on it, and then Aaron Kruger came in to do the final work on it. And so the final screenwriting credits is those three, with story credit to both of those previous two, Peter Craig and Justin Marks, from the different iterations that they had done. And I just think that's really interesting in the scope of the WGA and the credit negotiations that people go through, that you ended up getting all five of those people actually still getting credited for it, when it feels like it went through so many hands and iterations that I don't know, I was kind of surprised that happened.
Yeah, God, that's crazy. It's interesting, and really, I mean, in the spirit of the loss of Tony Scott, that this movie is still made and still has some teeth to it, I think is fantastic. It didn't get just lost in the all the fingers that were involved. Yeah.
And I guess Cruise actually approached Ridley Scott to see if he wanted to direct it in honor of his brother. But Scott, I guess, very politely declined and said, that type of high-octane action just isn't my cup of tea, essentially, which seems like that kind of is what he does quite a bit.
It's exactly what he does, yeah.
Yeah, anyway. But, Joseph Kosinski, I enjoy him as a director. I enjoyed Tron Legacy. I thought that was kind of fun. I mean, I think I have a hard time loving most of his films, but I enjoyed Tron Legacy. I enjoyed Oblivion. Only the Brave, I think, is my favorite film of his. And I feel like some of that might just be my connection to that being such a local story for me. And then this, and I missed Spiderhead. Did you see that one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saw Spiderhead.
Did you like it?
It's one of those movies that is like such a great idea, and it just never coheres. And I think part of it, interestingly to me, is we're going to review Spiderhead, but it's worth a watch. It's not a great movie, but I don't think you should avoid it.
Yeah. Now, I mean, have you seen all of the other films of his?
No, I have not. I have not seen only The Brave.
Oh, okay.
I've seen Tron Legacy, I've seen Oblivion, and Spiderhead, and Maverick.
So would you say, I mean, is there anything that speaks to you of a Kosinski style? Because I struggle with that. I think that there's a balance between like the action and the characters, which I think I can see in his stories, but I don't see anything that speaks to a clear Kosinski style.
Yeah, I don't think so. For me, maybe if you take out Maverick and Spiderhead, I can probably get you there with Oblivion and Tron Legacy, right? Because they have that same sort of austere, monochromatic view of the future, by necessity in the case of Tron. But once you throw in Maverick and Spiderhead, they're just all very, very different.
But it's all technology. Like there's a different.
It is. It's all technology. That's for sure. Especially, I guess that's true. You take out Maverick, which has a much more grounded view of technology, and in fact, through the course of the film, gets less technological as they're fighting with the F-14. Spiderhead, Oblivion, and Tron Legacy are all about the future, right? They're all about stuff you don't understand yet.
And Only the Brave is not about technology. That one is just about firefighters. So,
okay,
very different story.
Yeah. No, I think he might just end up being a story guy. I don't really have a sense yet of what's a Kosinski story.
Yeah. That is an interesting element for sure, especially considering the category that we're talking about.
Yeah, but I can say, I haven't seen Only the Brave, obviously, but Tron Legacy, Oblivion, Top Gun, I enjoyed immensely. and Spiderhead is not terrible. So he's doing all right for me. Like, I enjoy Kosinski movies for sure.
Yeah. Well, shall we keep plugging away?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, we'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Anton Vlasov, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
Hey listeners, it's Andy, and I'm here to see if you've tried Audible yet. With an incredible selection of audiobooks, it is the perfect way to dive deeper into the stories upon which some of your favorite films are based. Audible members get a credit every month to redeem on any audiobook they like, plus access to a huge Plus catalog of podcasts, originals, and more. Just imagine listening to the books that inspired movies like The Bourne Identity, Moneyball, or sci-fi classics like Dune. The best part? You can try Audible free for 30 days and get your first audiobook on them. It's a great way to experience storytelling while supporting this podcast. To get started, go to thenextreel.com/audible or text The Next Reel to 500-500. Listen to incredible audiobooks and support the show today. That's thenextreel.com/audible.
All right, sequels and remakes. Are we done with Top Gun?
I would think maybe according to Tom Cruise, yes. But according to Miles Teller, that might not be the case. May 2022, he had pitched, or he'd revealed that he had pitched a sequel, tentatively titled Top Gun Rooster, of course, centered on his character. And, he has been having ongoing discussions with Cruise about it. So maybe Cruise would be involved. But, to your point, maybe he would become more of a supporting character as we follow Rooster. And as of this year, this January, it was reported that they are developing that sequel. So I don't know. I'm curious about that. And maybe by following Rooster, it's pulling far enough away from that original story that the original had been based on and the whole lawsuit and everything. And maybe that's going to push it to a place where they feel like they're not going to run up against that lawsuit anymore. Who knows? But it does. I don't know. I don't think they need to keep going forward. And I don't think I am that excited about the Top Gun Rooster idea. Like, I enjoyed what they did here. I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens.
Andy, Top Gun Rooster is so stupid. That is
well, it's and what's funny about that is each of the, apparently, like I think Miles Teller actually said, each of the actors got to come up with their own call sign. And I don't know how much truth is in that because obviously it's scripted, but maybe they got to change it or whatever. But he wanted Rooster for him because it was kind of in the same family as Goose. Yeah.
And it's better than Duck.
Yeah.
Swan, Top Gun Swan, Top Gun Starling. We can keep going. Pigeon on my wing. Okay, well, of course I'll see it. If it gets made, I will see it. It'll probably be extraordinary, and I also don't want it. How did it do at awards season? That's why we're here.
It is why we're here. It did pretty well. 107 wins with 234 other nominations. A lot for technical awards. At the Oscars, it was nominated for 6 awards. It was nominated for Best Film Editing and Best Picture, but lost both of those to Everything Everywhere All at Once. It was nominated for Best Original Song, Lady Gaga's Hold My Hand, which I think is terrible. Every time it comes on, I'm like, ugh, what is this terrible song that they got? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's Lady Gaga. Ooh, wow. And that got an Oscar nomination? How'd that happen? I don't know, but I do not like this song. But it lost to a much better song, which Pete still hasn't seen in context of the film, Natu Natu from RRR. Fantastic. It did get nominated and win for Best Sound. It was nominated for Best Visual Effects, but lost to Avatar, The Way of Water. And it was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, but lost to Sarah Polley's Women Talking. The reason we're here, the DGA Awards, it was Kosinski was nominated for Best Director, but lost to the Daniels for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And we love the Saturn Awards, the Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Awards, which really has just expanded to become the Genre Awards. This film was nominated for Best Action Adventure Film and won. Also, Tom Cruise won Best Actor, and it won Best Editing. Kosinski was nominated for Best Director, but lost to Matt Reeves for The Batman, and it was nominated for Best Special Effects, but lost to Godzilla vs. Kong. And as I've been doing in this particular series, did Kosinski actually win Best Director in any of those 234 nominations? The answer is no, he did not.
Wow. Do you think he should have somewhere?
I was going to say, maybe that speaks to why both of us have a hard time feeling like, what is a Kosinski film? Like, does it feel like a Kosinski film? Does it just feel like a Tom Cruise film? Like, what stands out about Kosinski here? I just think that he handles all of the pieces well and makes it, made a very competent film.
All right, then. How did it do at the box office?
Well, Kosinski had a whopping $177 million for this legacy sequel, which is $183.6 million in today's dollars. The movie premiered April 28th at CinemaCon, then opened May 27th, 2022, opposite the Bob's Burgers movie and the re-release of RRR from just a few months before. This opened, of course, in the number one spot, which it held on for 2 weeks before Jurassic World Dominion took its spot. It stayed in the top 10 for 21 weeks, even sneaking back into the number one spot again the week of September 2nd. All told, this was a massive success, earning $718.7 million domestically and $776 million internationally for a total gross of $1.6 billion in today's dollars, becoming Tom Cruise's highest-grossing film. Even with this massive budget, that still lands it with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $10.9 million, cracking the top 20 of the movies that we have discussed on the show. And who knows, with that success, maybe we can look forward to a legacy sequel for Cocktail sometime down the road.
Eddie. Oh, you're a genius.
They could just call it Cocktails.
Cocktails. Oh my God. Actually, what you don't know is that's actually the rundown for Top Gun Rooster. It's just Rooster, and he's super depressed, and he's in the Bahamas.
That's awesome.
Okay. Well, I'm thrilled that we got to talk about this movie, and given all the awesome but more auteur movies we've talked about this season, it was kind of a delight to hit a Top Gun movie.
It was fun. It was very fun to watch again. And I mean, I love this movie. It's just a great Hollywood film. Like it's a great example of what Hollywood can do right.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we will be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, closing out the series and our 13th season looking at awards categories over the last century. The Daniels, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mrs. Wang. Mrs. Wang.
Mrs. Wang, are you with us?
I am paying attention.
Now, you may only see a pile of receipts, but I see a story. I can see where this story is going. It does not look good.
What's happening?
Evelyn, I'm not your husband. I'm another version of him from another universe. I'm here because we need your help.
Very busy today. No time to help you.
Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. You can access all of their memories, their emotions, even their skills. There's a great evil spreading throughout the many verses. And you may be your only chance of stopping it.
Don't make me fight you. I am really good.
I don't believe you.
Wow, that was really good.
He's waiting in the wings.
The universe.
He speaks of senseless things.
Is so much bigger
Script is you and
than you realize.
Of all the places I could be, I just want you to share with you.
Remember our mission. Consider the fate of every single world of our infinite multiverse.
There is no way I am the Evelyn you are looking for.
Every rejection, every disappointment has led you here. To this moment. Don't let anything distract you from it.
Hey film fans, Andy here from The Next Reel. Can you believe we have recorded almost 700 episodes dissecting and discussing movies? It's a testament to our incredible community of listeners like you. Your support means the world to us, and one great way to show that support is by sporting some Next Reel merch. We've got shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, all featuring designs from movies we've covered on the show. Looking for a place to start? Grab a tee or hoodie with the Next Reel logo to rep your love of film. We've got our auteur theory design in there, along with our Patient Zero, plus many designs from movies we've discussed on the show. So head to thenextreel.com/merch and grab some gear today. Every purchase helps us keep the mics hot for our weekly movie chats. And thanks as always for being part of the Next Reel community.
Letterboxd, Andy. It's Letterboxd time. This is where we figure out how many stars we're going to take off John Hamm's shoulder and give to this movie in our ratings and reviews. Letterboxd.com/thenextreel. What are you going to do?
I'm going to demote John Hamm by 1 star, and I'm going to give this 4 stars. 4 stars and a heart.
That, I went back to my review the first time we watched this movie, and I gave it 4 stars, and I feel like 4 stars is where it lives.
Yeah.
Because I'm exuberant and love it, and also... Yeah, it's a Top Gun movie.
It's exactly what Hollywood does well, which can be a fault too. And so 4 stars and a heart. I think that's great for this one.
Perfect.
All right. Well, don't forget, you can find me at Soda Creek Film over at Letterboxd. You can find Pete at Pete Wright, and you can find the show at The Next Reel. So what did you think about Top Gun Maverick? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd, Andy. Letterboxd giveth.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
This is a game that we're playing with today's reviews. Who can out absurd one another?
I guess so. Maybe, yeah.
Okay. All right. Step up.
All right. So I have Io Edebiri's no stars review. It's just a starless review, and has this to say. Do I hate the military-industrial complex? Sure. Did I enlist immediately after the movie ended? Yes. Okay, that was a lie. But I did like the movie. I was physically shaking during the main flight sequences. Do you think Lady Gaga and Hans Zimmer text? Even just birthday wishes? I believe that all men are bisexual. My mom clapped at the end. Movies should make people clap again. What happened to that? I played Miles Teller's Tan in the movie, by the way, but don't ask me anything because the NDAs I signed are so crazy. But it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and Louis Pullman was the biggest prankster on set.
I played Miles Teller's Tan. All right. So write that down. It needs to go on a shirt. Now, I have a 5-star from Flowison. This was one of the first reviews of the movie, which I think may have come out before this person saw the movie. It's a 5-star. My God, this film. Wow, what an emotional roller coaster. When people talk about best films of all time, this will be at the top. The Cruise cinematic universe is here. When Vincent and Les Grossman appeared, everyone in the theater was chanting, Deshi, Deshi, Basara, Basara. Then it was revealed that Morbius was in the post-credit scene and was the father of Lightning McQueen. Biggest shock since Vader telling Luke he was his father's best friend's gardener. I don't know that I got even all of those references. I got most of them.
That was pretty crazy.
No, I think you win with the 10 miles times 10. I give it to you. Audience favorite.
Oh.
All right. Thanks, Letterboxd.